me.
Yeah, yeah. We should expand on a list for people like Evan. Snide remarks, personal space, dark humor, um,
Grunting.
a well-timed grunt.
Love languages for software developers. It's a very short
Oh,
book.
how dare you call me that?
What is it? Software engineer?
No, I'm a software developer. I just don't like being called one.
Oh, can I not call you Evan as well?
No, you can call me Evan.
Dude, you hear these snide remarks though? Evan is feeling the love from Dylan.
That's why he shows up week after week.
That's okay. Matt does remind me that. We're also a minute in. So if you're joining us, whether live or on the replay, what's up? Let us know that you've been watching. Say hello in the chat and let us know what you think Evan's love language is. Today, I am accompanied by Matt playing Pendelve the Parser, Evan, our incredible illustrator that will be working on a cover design between chapters, and someone that has a bunch of crap on their sweatshirt, also called Katie, who will be playing Saw. And we already hate each other because if you can see, I'm wearing Michigan colors today.
I can just get shorter. What do I?
Yes.
There you go.
You keep going a little further off screen, a little bit further. There, perfect.
Right.
Matt, what are we reading today? What are we doing today? How are you today?
Doing great. We are reading chapter 11, 12, 13, maybe 14, but we always overestimate how much we get through. So let's say 3 chapters. We're diving into a part of the story where we really see these old friends having so much life pass between the last time that they really could consider themselves friends to today, where Beacon Saw has arrested Jorunn, is basically sentencing him to death. And just put yourself in her shoes for a minute. Imagine having a friend from your childhood, and you're the sheriff. You're like, kind of gotta take you in and make a spectacle of you at the gallows. Yikes! So, but Jorunn's going to get to plead his case and try to convince her of his innocence. But he's got a pretty bad reputation to overcome as being this weirdo, and his story is not easily believable. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, 11 people are dead. And he's like been a
people are
key witness, or he's been like a key subject in a main attack of the city.
Yeah.
Yep. I love it. We finished off where like there's a mob that's on the way to get Jorunn. Pendelve goes a little bit ahead of the crew. He uses his calling Luke to try to find Jorunn. He sees Jorunn in his 3 callings. One of them is a monster. It's like 20 feet tall. And he gets to kind of communicate with the Jester a little bit. And we see this like humanity from the Jester, but you still don't for sure know. And we're going to be starting it from the Jester's point of view. So if you're tuning in between chapters, we're going to be checking in with Evan. Say hi, Evan.
Hi.
Yeah. Evan will be working on a cover design for an upcoming origin novel that will be published in March, right, Matt? End of March?
Yeah, I think so. Probably end of March. What was that, Evan?
I said everybody knock on wood.
Yeah, no, don't doubt that deadline. We're still aiming at June 2024, right?
Yeah, I wish. But if you're tuning in, we'll check in on what Evan's been doing. And feel free as the chapters go along, ask questions. Let us know what you're thinking. If there's any funny moments and you're like, oh my gosh, you guys should clip that, just write it for us so we know, because we're going to be in character. I will be playing a 10-foot tall Jester. I'm not going to be thinking of that stuff. We'll recap each chapter once it's over, ask some questions, and dive right back in. And with that said, I say we just get into it, huh?
Let's just go ahead and get into it. Actually, let me say we got a special guest and 2 special guests. One slightly larger than the other. One very tiny special guest showing up here in a little bit. So stay tuned.
That's a very good hook for people to stay tuned for what it is. There was one other thing I wanted to say before we dived in. Oh, grab your book. If you have your book, if you have something to drink, if you have the kids, grab the book. And you can go to chapter 11. Matt, what page would that be?
Chapter 11 starts on page 67.
Go to page 67, chapter 11. We're going to dive on in. We'll be starting with Jorunn. Yes?
You got it.
All right, is there anything else you want to say while I put myself on mute and practice my Jorunn voice? Because sometimes I feel like I forget it.
No, you definitely don't forget it, because last time you had to step in for a moment from another character. You still did Jorunn. Katie remembers.
Very tough.
So you got it.
Okay.
You got it.
Let's dive in. Chapter 11. We'll just say mob. Jorunn left his island to greet the lynch mob on the road. He waved to his arresters when they were still a long way off. The nearer they came, the more fervent and cheerful his Jester. When they got within shouting distance, the Jester covered his heart with a hand and flushed. He was flattered at the size of the party. "So nice of you all to come this way," he said in earnest. At the sound of his voice, those of the emblem's beast with jaws began snapping them with viciousness. There were 12 of them, 10 emblems accompanied by ferocious totems, all of all shape and size. The water beacon of order and her beast, Gariel, whose faint auric glow resembled steam against the mist, and a tallish blonde-haired man with a pair of rain-coated glasses perched on on the end of his nose. Beside him stood a regal, antlered wolf beast. Including his recent visitor, a quick count of the arresting party revealed one beast for every man, which meant one of them possessed a second totem. The inspector, no doubt. The hawkish way he peered over his glasses emulated the large camouflaged lizard to perfection. A wave of respect washed over Jorunn. And he nearly forgot his plan. The Jester knew that his size, his white body paint, his wild hair, his monstrous beast, and his knobby handmade bakken, though he mostly used for a cane, had a way of setting people on edge. He couldn't have that, which is why he stripped down to his skivvies and brought 3 rocks to juggle. A performance generally helps set the tone, and the absence of clothing would prove that he hid on his person no object of ill intent. His beasts were absent. He stowed the practice sword away in a safe place, and his wild hair was neatly matted by white paste to his scalp. In Jorunn's mind, he cut the figure of passivity. While the Jester was a master of reading human and beast body language, the emblems were not. The angry beast bore down on him with viciousness that Jorunn struggled to find a juggling rhythm. "The challenge with juggling is the beginning. The first few throws are what give you the rhythm. It's hard to find it when starting out. And when all of the balls fall, you look the fool. You make a fuss in front of those around you. Ha! But the beauty of juggling is in the beginning too. The first few throws are what give you the rhythm. With patience, you find it." And that's when Nipper struck Jorunn with a bolt of aura. The man recoiled, folded over in pain, and lost his flow. Or did he? Somehow, for a moment, he continued to juggle 2 of the stones with one hand. Disguised by a flailing flourish, he tossed the 3rd stone into the air, where it arced and fell at the parser's feet. Another barrage of aura bolts sent the last 2 stones falling to the ground, Jorunn with them.
I had a cough.
The Jester collapsed in an earth-shaking white lump. Pendelve bent down to pick up the rock. It had a hole bored through the center. From eons of steady erosion. Eons of steady erosion. Eons? Eons or aeons of steady erosion. It reminded him of the hagstones affixed to either side of Adder's skull, the ones the beast saw through. Quickly, before the arresting party or the beacon noticed, he tucked it into his pocket. The arrest hardly took more than a minute. The emblems had prepared for a manhunt. Their pent-up energy came out in literal bursts, leaving their quarry writhing in pain as they subdued and bound him to the bed of the trader's wagon. In the arrest, even in pain, the loquacious man went on talking. I'd like the ropes to be a little tighter. There you go. That's the stuff. What do you plan to do with me? Roast me like a spit pig? Pull me apart in 4 directions? Invite the town to see me hanged? What's my sentence, Beacon? I am many things, but a curious man first. The emblems worked diligently to get Jorunn secured to the wagon. They tied his arms, wrists, legs, ankles, torso, chest, and neck.
You will be hanged, Jorunn.
Perfect! Jorunn exclaimed. The beacon continued.
For the destruction of Lucidus and the murder of 11 of her citizens.
Beacon Sorrento told him.
Summon your beasts and remit them into my custody. We will make this less painful for you.
Less pain is good, but don't go all the way. Painless won't do. Pain is weakness leading. Kendor stuffed a dirty cloth into Jorunn's mouth, stifling his speech. And in end, only his eyes remained free, which jumped from emblem to beacon to parser in a frenzy. When his gaze landed upon Pendelve, the Jester winked. The captive exhibited a flash of zany sanity before retreating into his grunting madness.
Summon your beasts, Jorunn.
The beacon insisted.
Emblems, keep an eye on the woods. They are here, I know they are.
She hollered, her pitch heightened by a throat constricted with nerves. Yet she remained in control. She established a front and rear patrol, identified potential ambush sites, utilized her team of emblems and callings to perfection, and maintained a callous threat against Jorunn's life that would make any man think twice about misconduct.
I hold your life in Gariel's jaws, Jester,
she said. Saw's slender-nosed, scaly reptilian beast kept a menacing eye fixed on her quarry. When Jorunn exhibited less than satisfactory fear, it used another tact. The road grew dense with buffalo gourd, of which the emblems took turns lobbing into Gariel's direction. The saw-toothed beast caught the skull-like hard-shell fruits in its jaw, effortlessly snapping them into pulp. Hello, girl! Jorunn mumbled through the cloth. Nobody understood. Eventually, the Jester tired of incoherence and accepted his capture.
Well done, Beacon,
Pendelve complimented.
It would seem the man's guilty conscience worked in your favor today. Your method of striking fear in the region has had an effect.
The Eldwiser wanted order,
Saw said, a bit too loud for her words to be solely intended for the parser.
He knew who to come to.
It doesn't take a parser to see the truth of that,
Pendelve added.
So, what now?
Saw cocked an eye at Pendelve.
We give the people what they want. He will be hanged, of course. Have you come around to believing this oaf is our man? I seem to recall your doubts only a few hours ago.
I admit they haven't all been extinguished, but most. Those that remain are enlivened by a desire to be consequential to this case. You cannot blame a man for wanting a purpose. In the interest of that admittedly embarrassing need, may I make a suggestion?
Spit it out,
Saw said. Pendelve picked his words carefully. Her emblems listened in. He knew he ventured into treacherous territory. His presence in Lucidus dealt a blow to her pride, and he did not intend for her to suffer it twice. Now was not the time to sound smart or try to prove he belonged there. Since he decided to tag along for the arrest, thus revealing his presence to the emblems after all, he wanted them to dismiss any thoughts of his ongoing activity. They would trouble him far less if they thought he had garnered a reputation he did not deserve. A good suggestion would not disarm the beacon nearly as much as a poorly timed bad one.
I imagine your display will attract the greatest number of townsfolk should you wait until this storm breaks.
Listen, parser, I know my craft, and what you are dispensing is blindingly obvious. We have to catch the man's beast before we hang him. I'm not going to chance having the execution disrupted by an attack. Before he's hanged, I want those beasts locked up in edifice, far beyond the furthest feasible connective range. Lucidus will see the final flailings of a man crazed. The families who survive his victims will get their retribution.
Forgive me.
The parser said, placing a hand over his heart.
Perhaps I can be of service in another way. I noticed a stunning oak just outside of town that could be a perfect venue for the event. May I get it ready for you?
What?
The beacon scoffed.
Parser, are you suddenly a carpenter? No, find your purpose elsewhere. We have a perfectly good beech tree adjacent to the courtyard in the heart of town. You must be joking.
Of course.
Pendelve relented, pretending to be cowed by the beacon's chastisement.
My apologies.
Cowed and chastisement? Would that be right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Thank God I got through my part.
This is the one chapter, and there's a couple of others as we get later on, where we kind of split away from soul, like a singular perspective. Like Jorunn is definitely getting into Pendelve's mind in the narration here, which I noticed that in hindsight. I don't think it really pulls you out of the story, but since you were the one reading and you're really like reading Pendelve's thoughts, I noticed. I don't know if y'all noticed that at all.
I didn't, because I was so enthralled of trying to say everything right, and I think I started sloppy and then I got a little bit better. And did you like how I really committed to character?
You really did.
Thank you. I made sure I brought this, and it has dry erase on it. Did you notice anything, Katie?
I mean, it's definitely more insightful, but there's enough of a difference in your voice between your Jorunn voice and your Jorunn narration voice that it's just, here's the narrator's explaining something. It does make me wonder how reliable all of these narrators are insofar as their point of view of what's happening and what they're seeing.
What is this type of book called, Matt, where it's like each chapter is like through the eyes of someone else? Because George R.R. Martin does this, correct?
Yeah.
That really
multiple perspectives. I mean, I don't know if it has a better, like a more official sounding name. Evan might know.
Evan, do you know, or do you have any thoughts on the chapter?
No, I don't. For me, it's the War and Peace formula.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts on the chapter you just listened to, Evan?
I think it was great.
Thank you very much.
I can think of a few old friends I could conceivably send to the gallows. So yeah, resonated quite a bit with me.
For those watching,
the perfect Evan response.
Probe no further. Okay, so now we're going into the next chapter. It's called The Coroner. Matt, anything you want to tell us before we go in, other than this is where we get the surprise?
Yeah, here comes the surprise guest. Let the guests, especially this mini one, serve as some foreshadowing between Morwenna and Pendelve, perhaps.
This is a children's book.
This happens off the pages.
For anyone tuning in, this is Bella, Matt's beautiful wife, and their son, Rose. She will be playing Morwenna, the coroner. We're excited to have you, Bella. Thank you so much. No pressure to balance your words with a child. Matt, should we jump right in?
Yeah. You in all them? Hi, buddy.
Okay.
Look at this guy.
I'm going to mute myself
So
in case
happy.
I cough.
Such a happy boy.
All right.
All right. Chapter 12, The Coroner. The storm showed no signs of stopping. When the party returned to Lucidus, they were all soaked to the bone. Pendelve resisted the temptation to use Chugach's voltaic screen, the beast's form of auric control that enabled the manipulation of electromagnetic forces, instead opting to shiver in solidarity with the group. If the parser were alone, Chugach could have charged the air in a dome above his head, creating a repellent against the ionized rain. Shared suffering endeared people to one another, while comfort in the face of another's displeasure had the opposite effect. Technically, he could have expanded the dome to shelter all of them, but instead he clung to secrecy, feeling a sneaking suspicion that subversion would be more useful than a dry cloak. When they returned to Lucidus, Jorunn was taken to a public pillory in the courtyard, which stood on a platform in the midst of his own destruction. Emblem Candor and Emblem Pierce volunteered to take the first watch. Pendelve went with them to glimpse the tree Saw had referenced. He confirmed it with the emblems. The tree in question, the one Jorunn would be hanged from once the weather cleared, was a mature beech tree growing on the banks of the Lorne. While not an obvious choice, the parser had no doubt that the massive, tangled, gray-barked deciduous had a long history reaching backward to days before recorded time. That pleased him. The beacon had yet to string up a rope, making Pendelve's plan a bit easier to execute. He spoke instructions within Smitha's mind, who hid nearby, before being racked by a violent shiver. With that settled, he moved on to his next errand, the trader. After encountering his corpse and his spilled wares on the road, Beacon Sorrento sent the coroner to retrieve it. Poisoning was the official conclusion, and while Pendelve doubted that the coroner would refute it, he wanted to take a thorough look at the victim for himself. He had seen death by poison before, and rarely did it leave a person, even in death, quite so pale and peaceful. More often, their faces took on the nightshade hues and exhibited pain and misery. One can learn a lot about a poisoner by their choice of poison, by its effects on its victim, and by the locations one would procure its ingredients. One could also learn a lot about the crime itself. While the parser had personally witnessed Adder's rampage and the Jester's odd behavior, Jorunn stood accused of more serious crimes, 11 murders. The parser wished to leave the habit of hearsay with the gossipers. Evidence, facts, and reliable testimony. These were the instruments of an effective parser. In an environment where his employers had already jumped hastily to a number of conclusions, Pendelve must be steadfast in his reliance on the aforementioned tools. Until that time, when a poison, contagion, or other vileness was laid bare, Pendelve would keep his conclusions in suspended animation. East of town, the parser encountered a woman on the side of the road who fit the coroner's description. If it was, her name was Morwenna Llewellyn. He had been told she was tall and pretty. Too pretty for a coroner had been their exact words, whatever that meant. This woman stood just shy of his height, had brown hair tied back in a French braid, olive skin, and a clever way about her. She stood by her beast, a large black cervid with a row of broad palmate antlers from its head down to its hindquarters. Its antlers gave the impression of 10 mirrored hands. Together, they formed a rack of sorts, which the coroner used to fasten her tools. Down the center of the beast's spine, cradled in the bowl made by the antlers, lay a 12th victim. As he approached, she unfastened the restraints holding the body in place. Her calling lowered, rolled sideways, and spilled the corpse onto a sledge. She fastened it down once more, only lifting her head to acknowledge the parser when his feet came into her hunched-over view. "Busy day," Pendelve said. "Can I give you a hand?"
You had better not.
"With the rope, then," he suggested, and made to grab the loop of rope tied to the front of the sledge. It would be too short to loop around Chugach, but then again, the narrow trail that splintered into the woods would be problematic for its antlers, too. "Our beast can only get us so far," Pendelve added.
Sure.
She said without stopping her work.
I'd heard a parser was in town. You must be in.
Her hands moved with rote dexterity. Within seconds, she had the body secured without ever touching it. "Guilty as charged." She lifted her gaze.
That's a dangerous thing to say around a dead body.
He smiled at her.
Quick heads
Do
up
they
for
all
some
look-
reason. Quick heads up. So sorry for some reason. Bella's not fully. Is it just me? Bella's not fully coming in. It's like a little.
I can't hear her either.
I thought
Oh,
it's.
really?
Yeah.
It's coming in
just-
a little staticky.
Otherwise, it's perfect, Bella.
I will stay closer. start with this.
That's a dangerous thing to say around a dead body.
He smiled at her. Do they all look this peaceful? She stood, pressed her hands into her hips, and came to his side. She tilted her head to one side and then the other. Frowning, she said,
Peaceful, huh?
as far as poisonings go, this one and the one from earlier look to have died in denial of their fate. I keep hearing it's a slow poison, but I don't see the signs. No pain, no struggle, no apparent discomfort for that matter.
You've seen a lot of death, Parser. You an expert?
I'm no coroner,
Thank you for saying that.
the coroner added.
Come on, the side of the road is no place for this type of talk.
She glanced at the rope in his hand and then led him into the woods. The trail led down into a gorge and then to the mouth of the cave. There she came around the back of the sledge, and together they carried it into the claggy, bioluminescent dimness.
Here.
She instructed, indicating a dry place on a shelf of stone. You manage all of this alone.
Not when I have a volunteer.
On her count, the pair arranged the victim next to the one from earlier. A couple others, judging from the human-sized lumps of burlap, remained at the end of her workstation.
All my usual associates are working stiffs.
She said. Pendelve smiled. They don't seem tortured by the work.
Don't be so sure. They are dying to get out of it.
The parser gestured to the bodies. Both men, though shriveled, ghostly pale, and with skin lacking a lively elasticity, could have been sound asleep. So this look of peacefulness is relief.
They didn't die of heartbreak, I'll tell you that much.
I'll be honest. My gut tells me they didn't die of poison either. The coroner looked up at her bespectacled companion.
You're a man of science, aren't you, Parser?
You noticed.
Can I share a theory with you without you looking at me sideways?
Let's hear it, he said, raising an eyebrow. The coroner took a moment to choose her words.
I think these old folks died of dehydration.
She said, adopting her thoughtful, hands-on-hips lean. In a fashion Pendelve knew well, she keenly observed his reaction. Pendelve had been thinking the same thing. The evidence was there. The cracked lips, the shriveled skin, the peaceful countenance, the relatively normal complexion as far as corpses go. These showed the victims had not seen death coming. At some point, they drifted off into a sleepy unconsciousness and never woke up. Pendelve guessed the trader's cart only overturned when the man died, and his beast underwent the unpredictability of ascension, a calling's brief posthumous continuation. With the harness and chain already weakened by the caustic waters of Lake Prism, when his beast reacted to the sudden absence of the comforts of its human, it wouldn't have taken much to roll the cart in the process of tearing free. The violence had not occurred at the end of his life, but beyond his death. I take it that wasn't what the beacon wanted to hear. She shrugged, but not out of detachment.
It didn't make a difference. When people die, there's often a body failure of some kind. Nobody dies of old age. It'll be heart failure, respiratory issues, pneumonia. Poison is the same way. You die because your body cannot function properly. Dehydration is just an explanation of death. It's not much of a patsy. What's notable is an absence of cause of dehydration. Now, poison is the easiest explanation. There's no evidence of it. I can hardly go to the beacon and suggest by will alone all 12 victims decided to collectively stop hydrating.
So, what did you tell her?
I told her that after an extensive search, I could detect no evidence of any known poisons.
Morwenna clicked her tongue. Known poisons. Too easy for her to write off your skills and knowledge, or, by her estimation, your lack thereof.
You get it. That woman only sees things her way.
Though the coroner's words did not violate any laws, the parser still felt a shiver run up his back. He felt the strange sensation of being watched, or of the two of them not being as alone as he thought. Doubtless, the beacon would find a way to punish such dissent. Yet a glance at the exit revealed an unblemished arch of gray. Something about her phrasing tickled his extra sense, alerting him to something important about her words. But what? He remembered the stone in his pocket. Jorunn had been juggling it when they arrested him, and he had tossed it to the parser. The stone resembled the ones affixed to the sides of Adder's head, only smaller. The Jester told him, through Luke, that seeing is believing. Beacon Sorrento only sees things her way. As Pendelve drew the small hagstone out of his pocket, he considered another's perspective. What was Adder's way of seeing things?
Scene. First and foremost, thank you, Rhodes. Not one peep out of this kid.
Yeah. Good job, Rosie boy.
Thank you so
Look at
much,
this
Bella.
guy.
That was fun.
Yeah, do you understand?
Sure. Good job.
He's
There's the peep.
And he's upset that he's stopping.
Say love you, Dad.
We get it, dude. What a
Love you, buddy.
kid. What a great dad, too. He's an author and a great dad. Bye, Rhodes. I'm your uncle. So, in this great chapter, in this one, I think this is also one that you may have added after we first started to give more context of like, hey, we're not the only ones seeing this. Or has this always been there, Matt?
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to remember exactly what the editor's notes was on this because, yeah, I think it did come in later. Maybe. Or, actually, all her note, this was here, but all her note is humanize the coroner a little bit. All she ever was the coroner. So I gave her a name and made her a little bit more of a fully fleshed out character.
Fully fleshed out character. She's clearly, you have your wife speaking for her now. This was my biggest question with all that. Does Bella say that if she had a calling, it would look like this or no? Is that your own
No.
Damn.
No, her we've only designed one of her callings, and it's like a blue heron named Perch.
Yeah, very nice pun. Before we go to Evan's drawing, because he's adding some. One of the things that you've asked for was some mist, and I'm starting to see the color. Katie, have you thought if you had a calling in Bastunia, you don't have to tell me the path unless you want to, what it would look like?
Haven't thought it out a huge amount.
You son of a
big fan of anything Corvid based though, so that would probably be Corvid cat based situation.
Okay,
Google.
Corvid of the Crow family.
What is Corvid?
Corvid of the Crow family.
I'm sorry. Yeah, like a raven or a crow. It's any of those birds. Blue jays are corvids as well.
Oh, cool.
You're speaking to idiots. Thank you for that, Katie.
No, we learn words all the time. God forbid, we show up and we learn something. I mean, heavens, learning. Do we love it or hate it?
No, I love it, and I love the. You would love right down the road from me, Katie. There is a cafe. It's like a bar cafe called The Raven, and it's Edgar Allan Poe themed, and it's got a bunch of like black cats, ravens, crows in it. I think you'd dig it.
Oh, absolutely.
So next time that we're actually getting everyone to move to Port Huron. Evan's thinking of it, Matt's thinking of it. So
it's mandatory. It's like a return to office kind of thing. Mandatory on Found Adventures team must be back in Port Huron by 2026.
He loves it. Matt, if you want to real quick, and then we'll jump back in here. How is this come? Do you have the book near you? What is it that you told Evan you're looking for in this? And then I'd be curious how Evan goes about like creating it specifically with color and paint.
And honestly, maybe Evan can look at something like this. Here's a cover that there's very few things honestly about this cover that I wanted to see carried over. But there was a feeling, and I'm not even sure how to put the words to it, like a mistiness or like a, when you're sitting on like
English seaside.
Yeah, just get this feeling of like things kind of hidden away, and it's a little gloomy, but it can still maintain like a majesty, beauty. So I think you're doing it justice.
Thank you.
So when you take that, Evan, I mean. Yeah, there we go. Can you show it right before this?
Yeah.
Is the main part like going on specific areas? You're like, I'll add color solely here.
No. There will be color everywhere. I'm unclear on what the finish is quite going to look like, whether it's going to look closer to the behind the shroud cover or more like a line and color heavy, something more like a Fables cover. I don't know, but I'm trying to get. I mean, this is a picture of a sunny beach. Maybe it's not like a bright summer's day, but it's mostly clear sky. The clouds are all white and fluffy and backlit, or not backlit. They're silhouetting all of the things that we want to see, as opposed to sort of bringing in a cloudy, overcast, gray, misty ocean side. So something more like a beach in winter, I guess, is what I'm trying to go for. So a lot of the shapes are changing. A lot of the silhouettes are going to be affected, and I'm trying to work that out while also introducing some color, trying to nail some of the moodiness that Matt's going for.
Love it.
You talked about a work you were doing with Gold Mountain Games recently, where it's like, even when things come in like this, you have to ask yourself, where is the sun hitting every character, and exactly where, and how will it, I know you were working on like a knight with like armor on. So like, how does it shine off
crits.
Yes, that's for Katie, correct?
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
I
that was
gotta
for
check that out
Katie.
still.
That's with Alphonse Elric.
And Daniel, right?
According to you.
His name is Sir Etienne.
That is Alphonse. That is Edward's brother who lost his soul when they try to resurrect their mom using alchemy. That is.
Listen, all I'm gonna say is, if you listen to the episodes, you're awkwardly correct.
You're welcome. And that, my friends, is what a trope is. It's so good. So with that, though, coming over here, Evan, will you will the light not shine the same off these guys, or will you see kind of like a sunny winter's day?
No, it's going to be overcast.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be a bit of peekaboo sky in a couple places, but for the most part, this is intended to be cloudy day, not a whole lot of sun to go on.
Yeah, it does give this this feeling of like a really tumultuous sea that's kicking up a lot of mist. It's not like your Florida Atlantic beach where it's just sort of gently lapping on this beautiful shoreline. It's like this is rocky, reefy, violent sea, which, read the story, that all ties into things that are happening.
We've been waiting. Evan, you're doing a great
tangent. I see a tangent.
No, we're not. We're not doing a tangent. We're diving back.
I see a visual tangent. You do your thing.
Speaking of which, let's go down a different path here. If you're watching and you love Evan's work, we always let him know we love him. He loves words of affirmation. Feel free to throw it in the chat below. Evan, you're incredible at what you do. Thank you so much. That being said, we'll come back to the story. He hates me or loves me, Katie. I don't know which one. Hates me or loves me, we won't say it. We're coming back to the story. We're back now to Saw's perspective. Matt, what would you kind of say? It's like we went off, them bringing, they've brought Jorunn in, right? While they're bringing it in, Pendelve has kind of went to see where's the hanging going to take place. And then from there meets up with the coroner, learns a little bit more. Is there much else we need to know going into this?
Let's see. No, I think we've established that they're old friends, and I think that's about it. We can dive right in.
Sounds good. Saw, over to you, my lady. I will be ready for my parts.
All right. Beacon saw Sorrento and her calling Gariel tried to be a revitalizing presence around town. As the rain continued to fall, all of Lucidus hurried to put the East Quarter back together. Although she made it clear she did not expect them to work around the clock. All were permitted a break here and there. She relished in the speed at which the word of the Jester's capture spread through Lucidus. While lending oneself to the restoration effort was most admirable, Saul welcomed, even encouraged, her people to stretch their backs on a walk to the square. She found herself reminding them of the horned melon crop that grew in abundance throughout the community gardens, in case they were hungry or thought to use the fruits for an alternative purpose. Before long, the wide grins of those returning from the square encouraged her. She highly preferred them to the untrusting sneers that had become so common in recent weeks.
Are you sowing a new garden, Saw?
Jorunn asked when she approached the pillory. The device forced his head down, prevented him from looking up, and yet he still knew it was her.
Best if these seeds go a couple knuckles deep.
He blew out, spitting pulp from his mouth. Before answering, Saw scoured the woods with an eyeshot, searching for his beasts. She saw nothing out of place. The woods provided few spots to hide, especially for the likes of and Adder. The little red one could probably conceal itself. Venus, if she remembered correctly, yet the brightness of the fur would stand out against the dull bark of the beech trees. So early in spring, the canopies remained bare, adorned with but the first nubby sprigs of green. Even if Venus did watch from the trees somewhere alone, it would be no match for Gariel. You, you never could appreciate the gravity of your situation, Saul said in a way of greeting.
You underestimate me.
Jorunn said.
A man of my size knows all about gravity.
Saul had no patience for his wordplay. Summon your beast, Jorunn,
So you can hurry up and hang me?
he asked.
I don't think I've suffered quite enough yet. Besides, your townfolk seem to be enjoying themselves. The sound of a melon breaking against my skull is great for morale.
A wiser man might accept his fate, Saul said. You destroyed the town.
Eh,
Jorunn squawked questioningly. He lifted his great head, craning an eye out at Lucidus.
destroyed? Adder missed a few.
You find this amusing? Putting people out of house and home? Giving them the fright of their lives?
No.
Jorunn said.
This is tragic.
Then why in fumes are you joking? People are dead.
I noticed you haven't accused me of that yet. Murder? Not in this conversation, anyway. Yet the melon throwers blame me. They have it in their minds that I killed their loved ones. I suppose this charade is intended to be cathartic? Is that it? All in the name of keeping order? Everyone can come out now. Lucidus is once again a safe refuge. Congratulations, Saw. You got your scapegoat.
Scapegoat, the Beacon of Order barked. Jorunn, half the town saw Adder's rampage, including the parser. Jorunn fell silent.
We can both get what we want here, Sawyer.
He said. She had not heard that name in years, decades. She had been Saul since her 10th birthday when Jorunn had given her the nickname. And what's that?
You can live up to your name, and I can clear mine.
He said simply. Accept your fate, Jorunn, Saul said with disappointment. Summon your beasts. The Jester slowly shook his head.
There is a threat. Adders killed 3 of them now. But last night, another one attached itself to the beast. It affected his mind. Witnesses saw the poor thing trying to take it down. Only your town got in the way. I'm not mad. At least not in the way you think.
You're talking nonsense, Saul told him. Nobody reported seeing any such thing.
It's invisible.
She sighed and made to leave. Accept your fate, Jorunn. This is getting sad. She looked him over once more before departing. She pitied the downcast Jester. He struck a pathetic image, a veritable giant covered in white chalky paint, cloaked in a ratty blanket, which she had donated to him from the stables, with holes cut for his head and hands, locked in a pillory she had built to hold beasts. The human-sized one stood adjacent, looking fit for a child when compared to her old companion from drudgery, a man she had once called a close friend.
Beacon!
Jorunn called after her. Her title sounded strange coming from him, like hearing her children use her first name. It gave her pause.
The Eldwiser would believe me.
I am not getting him involved.
You don't believe me?
No, Saul said flatly.
It will be easier if I show you.
Jorunn, she found herself unable to face him. The history between them stretched too far back, all the way to their seminal years when 2 lives lay in front of them, undefined. In the years of drudgery as kids, Saul and Jorunn had yet to make the choices that led them here. They had yet to make any choices at all, as every second of the day was dictated by one of the countless superiors in the Pandit family. While Saul spent those days shivering over a washboard in the Lauren, Jorunn spent them at her side, yet far away, engaged with figments of his imagination. The icy water meshed with his suggestible mind to transport him to an earth temple far to the north, Instead of washing clothes, the boy could convince himself that he was a bear named Selkirk, peeling the skin off a coho salmon. His tenuous grip on reality propelled him cheerfully through drudgery and into Cresthood, where childness rapidly fell out of fashion. As a crest, he changed, or at least he tried to. Setting aside his make-believing ways, turning away from he threw himself headlong into his studies. The emblems he served under sent rave reports to the Eldweiser, singing his praises and highlighting him as a shoo-in for promotion. To hear his betters tell it 20 years ago, the oversized boy was earmarked for great things. Amongst those prestigious titles, mentioned in the same breath as his name, included the emblem, and then Beacon, and by those outside of the Pandit family, even Apex Magnus. Everyone wanted Jorunn to lead them. Then one day, everything changed. Saul mustered up the courage for a final question. "What did he tell you that day?" she asked. She had always been curious. 20 years had passed with that question burning a hole in her heart, ever since the day when Saul's life went in one direction and Jorunn's another. Jorunn knew precisely what day she referenced.
He told me what I needed to hear. I just love you reading. It's fun
Yeah,
to
for real.
have Katie read.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have a good way of just creating the gravity around the character, or like the pain, Jorunn. In one of those last paragraphs, I'm like, I really feel this woman's pain. Like, dude, get out of your own way. Like you sound crazy, man.
I got chills towards the end. I'm like, man, that is like also like to look back and like this history that these two have between them. Which timing should we do one last like short chapter of like this?
Yeah,
this
we have time. Cresthood is perfect for it.
Yeah, it's pretty short. It's basically a flashback between Jorunn and Saw that Saw starts to allude to. I think the only thing I wanted to state is because I love that you bold words in here, Matt. The Pandit family. Is it cool if I just like quick little?
Yeah.
I saw a tangent.
Go for it.
I think it's important to know as people like grow up under these Eldweisers, right? There's 4 Eldweisers throughout Bastunia. They represent the 4 main elements: earth, wind, fire, and air. Think of them almost like the Dalai Lama, and literally what surrounds the Dalai Lama are Pandit families. And in Bastunia, these Pandit families are like they have dedicated their lives to teaching this young Eldweiser the way of politics, the way of history, the way of aura and deva. So like all the ways of life, so that Eldweiser can be the plenum that he or she is. So, and with that, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, how we have it set up, these Pandit families are the ones that really influence these drudges into Cresthood, into Emblemhood, into Beacons, and into the height, which would be the Apex Magnus, right? It's like that's kind of the hierarchy that these, what would we call them, spiritual knights are kind of following.
Yeah, you could call it that. Exactly. And people don't really advance within the Pandit family unless it's by the word of the Eldweiser, the person that kind of has the final say on everything. And also from their perspective of wisdom, they could look at somebody and say, hey, what everybody wants for you is not what the God wants for you, or not what is really best for you. Which is essentially where we're at right now. Is saw referencing a time in the past where Jorunn's life is like really promising, and everybody's saying this guy's going to be our leader someday. Yes, he was extremely childlike and a little bit like immature, if you want to call transforming a chore of like washing clothes in a river into something that's a little bit more playful and fun, immature. But I feel like that's a very valuable thing to have even in adulthood. It's just like seeing yourself doing different things and being playful. But yeah, then he got serious. Maybe he was kind of like faking it until one day the Eldweiser told him what he needed to hear, and then these paths diverged. Suddenly he wasn't the shoe-in to be a leader anymore. He kind of like he seemingly like lost it from a lot of people, from a lot of serious people's perspective? Or did he just go into being the most playful version of himself and kind of bucking what others would say, this is what you need to do as an adult. This is what you need to be as an adult. And here he is, and like well down that path, years, 20 years of being a weirdo. And now he's being condemned for his weirdness because it's just not serious enough. They don't see a utility on it, which is what he says upcoming. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm right here, Matt. It's very hard when you're like knowing a character is based off you and then hearing things like this. And it's like you have to separate, just like you have to when you're writing, even though almost everything that you said is true. And I do make believe a lot. I made believe I was a bear 2 days ago. So this will be a fun chapter to do because we're 20 years in the past, which means I am not good at this, but I'm going to do my best to be 20 years younger in this, as well as Saw if you choose, Sawyer.
Oh yeah, I'll try. I think that's just higher pitched me, but yeah.
I think it's harder when you talk like this to be 20 years younger. I don't know.
Yeah, what does that sound like?
I talk like this. I'm going to try that.
Dig deep.
This is the last chapter. We'll do a check-in on Evan. Evan, you able to stay if we go like a couple of minutes past?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We'll check in, see what you're seeing, see what you're liking, and then we'll bounce. And maybe one last update on the website, Matt. Cool. Chapter 14, Cresthood. 20 years ago, Jorunn and Sawyer sat in a field with their legs crossed. In these days, they had but 3 beasts among them, 2 with the large 15-year-old boy, and 1 with his female companion. As crests, they enjoyed new freedoms that drudges were not permitted, such as the ability to wander the countryside and forage for the makings of a picnic. As per her uniform, Saw wore her black hair in dual braids, a cream-colored prairie dress, and a pair of moccasins. Jorunn, too, wore a prairie dress, and not for the first time. His was a practical rebellion in response to not fitting any of the shoes, trousers, or collared button shirts available to male crests. He did, however, find a straw hat that suited him. However, at the moment it sat crookedly on Venus's head. Jorunn called it meditation, but his eyes were wide open, and his attention dwelled on the wildlife as it slowly, cautiously returned. Upon their clomping arrival, all the meadow's critters skittered back into their hiding holes. Now, after the sun had crawled a cloud's width across the sky, they returned to appraise them.
Do you know what I can do?
She asked. What? asked the boy, who at 15 years old sat as tall as the girl stood.
I can raise a bubble around Gariel that protects against everything. When it's up, nothing gets in. Nothing.
One mustn't take credit for their beast's abilities.
Don't quote the Eldwiser to me,
Sawyer snapped. You've heard it before then, Jorunn said softly. I thought maybe your bubble was up. Saw glared at her companion.
What can do?
She asked. She knew perfectly well what the fungus beast could do. Seeing the beast spinning on the breeze like a samara seed had practically become the quintessence of a trip to the water temple. Did I do it? Matt? Damn it. Quintessence had become the quintessence of a trip to the water temple. In those days, one had not truly completed their pilgrimage unless they washed the elders' feet, received a wise word, bathed in the garden fountains, and witnessed Any devout who experienced all 4 returned home as a dutiful servant, blessed, cleansed, and with a good omen. Still, Jorunn answered her question. Can jump.
I know can jump. That's not its mastery, is it? Even a frog can do that.
Can a frog tell you what a cloud tastes like? Sawyer rolled her emerald eyes.
Water?
She guessed. I used to think the same thing, he said smartly. The girl plucked a red and black flower from a long, arching stem. She brought it close to her nose and smelled. Unimpressed, she flicked it away. It rode on a gust of wind into a kaleidoscope of butterflies.
The Eldweiser told me what my name means. You want to hear it?
Please share, Jorunn said. Oh, shit. Hold on. Please share, Jorunn said without enthusiasm.
Sawyer means safe refuge. It comes from the account of Argus when Yish would have been washed over the rocks along with her calling if not for grabbing hold of a Sawyer. That's what a log stuck in the river is called. Did you know that? Even though the Sawyer was in the middle of the river with the fast current, the story says it didn't budge. That's what I'm named after, and that's what I want for our people. When the current is strong and they're being washed towards the falls, they can hold on to their Sawyer.
That's a nice thought. I call you Saw because of Gariel's nose. Saw's eyes rolled automatically. Gariel gnashed its interlocking teeth that ran the length of its narrow, elongated snout. It fixed a single bulbous green eye on Jorunn. Winking, one eye closed, the boy mimicked the reptilian beast. He bared his teeth, stuck out his chin, and tried to look menacing. Suddenly, Saw cupped her hand behind her ear.
Hush. I hear something.
I wasn't talking. Shh. A hare munching on clover nearby lifted its head. Jorunn heard it too. A whooshing, like the tide, or like a million stalks of amber grain brushed in unison by a blanket wind. First in one direction, and then another, and then a third. Yet the two of them sat in a small meadow a short walk from the water temple, far from things that would make such noise. Jorunn considered the nearby falls. Perhaps their rage could be carried by the right wind. But no, he could faintly hear the falls drowning on without ceasing, tucked within the folds of the meadows. Melodious? This sucks. Biophony. Just. The noise changed brush by brush, growing louder while maintaining its whimsy. His next thought alarmed him. A swarm of bees makes such a noise when flying as one. At the top of his breath, he relaxed, remembering the buzzing creatures through their relationship with and not by the painful memory of their stings. His fungi calling stayed on friendly terms with the pollinators, although the boy himself could not claim the same harmony. However, this was a whooshing, not a buzzing, which left Saw and Jorunn in utter mystery. But not for long. A white-capped wave rolled over the treetops, spraying the canopy. It followed the shape of the forest. Where the trees ended, the waves fell into the meadows. Moments before cascading into the ground, it lifted again, most gracefully, holding together in a thundering torrent the shape of a crawling meteor. The glistening ball and trailing mist circled the meadow's perimeter, tossing rainbows and showering the young crests in silky rain. After a lap, it slowed. It began to coalesce in a shape that Jorunn and Saw recognized. The hare had not moved. It observed the amorphous orb of water without concern, expressing none of the skittishness that came so readily moments ago. Nor had the butterflies fled, nor the skylarks, the pipits, the damsels, nor the crickets. Not that they lived in denial of the marvel before him, but recognized without delay that it meant them no harm. Just as a flower turns its face to the sun, so too did the wildlife treat this visitor with reverence. The shape had grown a head, corded whiskers, a muscular thorax, a snakish abdomen. short arms and legs that culminated into hooked talons, and a swishing tail. A ridge of blue spikes lined its back, which continued to lengthen until it wound about itself like a coiled rope. It hovered before them, wondrously immense, awesome, and perfectly peaceful. It drew its water in within itself and held it in place before transforming into bone and horn, skin and scale, flesh and blood, man and beast. Charm and Akal, the son of Argus and his immortal dragon, or as Saw and Jorunn knew them, the Eldwiser of water and his eternal calling.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There's 3 people here. We won't say where this originated. But I remember we can. Yeah, I don't know who's here. Do we go that much into detail?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're going to say, to be honest.
All right, I'm going to say it. First off, Saw, great job being a younger version of you. I did my best, even in the area where I was supposed to be less enthused. Thank you for your laughter. This scene came from me. We'll just say I took a trip with in my backyard at my dad's house, out camping. Thank you, Evan, for getting it. And I remember where I was just sitting, staring at this symphony that was before me. That was really just a bunch of trees. I wasn't moving. I was listening to music. I was just in utter peace. And I, looking into the clouds, saw a dragon. And then I looked around and I saw this family of rabbits, actually, running just like here and there, completely unaware that I was there. I'm like, man, how cool to be with wildlife. And it kind of hit me. I'm like, how cool would it be to have this powerful figure, like Akal, the eternal water dragon, be so forceful with his movements, yet not even stress out a bunch of rabbits, which are known for being skittish. Like, how powerful yet calming could you be at once? And man, Matt, like, it was so cool to read. You do such a good job with that picture. So that was fun.
I don't know if I remember all those details of where the scene comes from.
It was a long text message I sent you the next day.
Yeah. Well, I made it into the story, so which is why, even though you pushed back against this initially, we've got that right there.
Not. I'd rather it not, but I appreciate it.
Well, I don't care.
It won't.
There's actually there's a lot of scenes and a lot of like dialogue and ideas within the story that are directly from you. Felt right, felt right. So,
last thing that I'm going to say, I know we're 3 minutes past, unless you have something, Matt. I think it's very fascinating, for as much as Saw hates Jorunn, right? Modern day. She still is called Saw by almost everybody. And in this flashback, we hear that her name is Sawyer and how much it means. Yet the person that started the nickname is the person she's getting ready to hang. I thought that was pretty cool. So
he's kind of gone back a little bit to calling her by her actual name. If you've ever given someone a nickname that sticks, like well beyond the parting of ways, it's a great feeling. There's a guy, if I may indulge in a really quick story, I'll keep it under 2 minutes. In my cross country days, he was like a freshman. I think I was probably a senior. And we went to a team dinner, and the instructions from the mom hosting the team dinner was like, you cannot drink any of these sodas in the house. It was like immaculate white carpet. And so everybody poured themselves a drink and they took it outside, except for this kid who poured himself some Mountain Dew. And I watched some Mountain Dew slosh out of his cup onto the white carpet. And I'm like, hey, man, like you spilled some Mountain Dew. And no, I didn't. I'm like, notice that you're standing over a Mountain Dew spill with a cup of Mountain Dew. Like, yes, you did. There it is. He's like, no, I didn't. So he goes off, whatever, he leaves, and we like mop it up. The next day, and he was not one of the top 7 runners, so he didn't count. So I like finished the race, went and got a drink, came back to the track to cheer the last people on. he was a freshman. He wasn't that fast. I had a couple minutes to get back to the finish line, and a whole line of us, when he ran into the finish line, just slowly spilled our drinks. So like for the next few races, when he would run by, everyone would spill their drink. Started calling them spills.
That's the name that stuck.
Spills. Like 3 years later, I come back and my sister's in cross country, and someone mentions spills offhand. Like I never learned this guy's name, and apparently the whole team is still calling him Spills.
Jeez, this is horrible. This is just adding insult to injury for this poor
It's a pretty
guy.
good name, actually. You don't like it?
No, it's actually, and it's better than, I used to be on the hockey team, and I used to be a young boy in high school that played hockey, so worse than the name Spills. And I've had to have like these therapeutic moments where when I would come back to town, I would apologize to people. I'm like, I'm so sorry, man. So now I feel better. Spills is easy compared to, let's just stop talking about this. Let's check out.
It's a family-friendly story.
Let's finish. Mine would not have been. Let's finish with Evan. It looks more misty here. What did you add to make it look all like it's so much? What has changed since we last came here, Evan? Yeah, holy shit. Shoot. Do it again. Do it again. Nice.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not loving it, but
I hate you.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out the color, the level of clarity that's going to be needed and where. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know how it goes.
I love this because Matt, now is the person where this would be the cover of your book. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's as moody as I wanted it to be. I can't wait to see what it turns into because by the time I'm happy, Evan will still be like really frustrated with it, and then he'll bring it back. He'll be like, "Here's a couple edits," and I'll be like, "I didn't think I could get happier with this." And then he'll go noodle on it for another week or so, or whatever amount of time, and when he's finally happy, my mind will officially be blown. So I'm excited to be in this part of the process.
Katie, your thoughts on it as you see it, and as she does this, Matt, do you want to pull up the website?
My thoughts on this piece of art by Evan specifically?
Yeah,
or
definitely.
Evan's
Yeah,
art
definitely.
in general?
No, this piece of art. What do you like? What's jumping out to you? Evan's noodling. I am an easy man. I'm like, this is fucking effing dang it. This is cool. What do you see?
I like the amount of layers that he's got going on. I'm always a big fan of anything that Evan does with cliffs or large kind of landscape architecture going on in the background. I don't know why that's funny, but the giant clamshell, not clamshell, but seashell, the giant pointed thing in the background, I'm really drawn to specifically that because I imagine if you go down there next to it, it has like the actual opening like a giant seashell would, and it looks like you could go exploring in different areas of the landscape itself. I have not even paid attention to the foreground yet.
Evan, what is hilarious to you?
The whole doing things in layers, like slicing up a landscape into layers. It's kind of a parlor trick of establishing depth, and it's something that I fall back on a lot. And yeah, I try to challenge myself to use it less, but no, that's not happening.
I love it. I'm excited. I think it actually, like when I see it now too, Matt, you're right. Like having read the book before, it's crazy when you start to see pictures and you go back to the picture you had and you're like, oh, okay. Is this like, it just gives a different scene to it. Perfect. Oh yeah, dude. I think
there we go.
It's it. There you go. Put Matt on the bottom. Don't even put last name. Just put Matt. Yeah, definitely don't put his last name, Evan, because it might not be spelled right.
Yeah, see, there you go.
This is fun, man. Thank you, Evan, for the work you're putting in and the layers you have behind this, every single one of them. As we wind down, it is a fun thing to announce for anyone watching. Unfound Adventures now has more stuff in our store. So if you check out unfoundadventures.com and go and click store, right? Is it store? And then accessories, we have fanny packs. We have cases for iPhones. We have hats. We have bucket hats. Look at that's Evan's work on your phone. And we have sweatshirts that have an embroidered sigil of Unfound Adventures. What we will soon have is sweatshirts with an embroidered sigil of your
Calling.
not your calling, Matt, the badges, what your embroidered
class?
Embroidered sigil of your class. So as you can take our quizzes online, you can understand if you're a defender, a builder, or an explorer right now. And then you can go further in depth and say, hey, are you a defender vanguard? Are you a defender shield? Are you a defender stealth or medic? And you can have, there we go, your own fanny pack with it, your own sweatshirt with an embroidered patch on it. And they're Adidas sweatshirts, so they're actually comfortable. And all proceeds that we make go right into pouring into more books. I think we're halfway to our initial goal of our first 80K. We've raised about 42,000 now with Kickstarters, book sales, and school visits. And we can raise more if you want to support us by going to our website. Evan had this idea months ago. Dylan was an idiot and didn't fully listen. And then when he did listen, didn't know how to find the right partner. And it literally took Matt 2 days. So this is my fault that it hasn't come sooner, but I think it's so cool. Matt, anything else you want to say on this?
Fanny packs seem entirely random, but I was just making products that I really want. and so I saw these. I'm like, I'm going to make 12 of these suckers. So here we go.
Matt and I are already buying hats, and we're like, oh, we feel like we're making money even though we're paying it to our website. So it feels good. I think the hats are awesome. I can't wait to get a hat.
Financial logic. Look, $11 profit on the hat that I just bought from our own store. We're doing great.
We're figuring
Spend 30. Yeah, amazing.
So that's one last thing too. You can check out the website. Look at that. We appreciate everyone. I will do my best. 313, who I know, Brad, thanks for watching. It's hard for me. Tune in next week where we go further into the story and have a cross-examination between Pendelve the Parser and Jorunn the Jester. We'll see you all next week.